This has been by far the hardest story I've ever worked on. And I think why I feel that this is so hard mentally, physically, and emotionally is that I do not see an end in sight. I was not assigned to go to 26 Federal Plaza. We stumbled upon it. It was May 29th. I was down at Foley Square where all the courthouses are. I believe it was a protest, a Palestinian protest. And I walked by 290 Broadway, which is right across the street from 26 Federal Plaza, and I saw a masked man walk through the lobby. And then I saw another, and I picked up my camera and I shot a few frames. Someone walked out and said, "Those are ICE agents, and they're grabbing immigrants coming out of their court hearings." To which I said, "Wait, there's immigration courts inside this building?" And they said, "Yeah." At that point, four other journalists came behind me, and I said, "There are ICE agents inside there, and we need to go in." So we went to the front, and because it's a public building, I know that we are allowed inside. However, they said, "No, we can't go in." I said, "I need to speak to a supervisor," and they brought a supervisor, and he said no. Then they brought over Homeland Security in all his tactical gear, and they said, "You can't get in." And I said, "Well, this is a First Amendment violation. I'm going to call my attorney." So I called my attorney, and he happened to be down at the Southern District, which is about 30 seconds away. And he said, "I'll be there." He walked over, met with Homeland Security, and we demanded to talk to the building management. And at that point, they said, "All right, we'll take you to the building management." I handed my cameras over because they wouldn't let me have cameras inside. Handed my cameras over to one of the other journalists. We went upstairs and we talked to the building management. He said, "You can't shoot in here." And we said, "Yes, you can. In fact, it's written on a plaque on the wall inside 290 Broadway that if there's a news gathering event, we as journalists can come in with our cameras." We walked him downstairs, showed him the plaque, to which he was befuddled by. And then we read it out loud to him because he was just couldn't believe what he was reading of his own building that he manages. My attorney, Wiley, said, "I'm bringing all the journalists in. And if you stop us, you were going to have a First Amendment violation." And we've been in there ever since. Very early on, inside 26 Federal Plaza and 290, there were only four journalists that went in. And we just felt that if we told everybody right away, we'd be shut down. We fought every day for about 3 weeks because they'd stop us every single day, and we'd have to explain to them that it's a First Amendment violation if you don't let us into the hallways. Now, we can't shoot inside the waiting rooms or the courtrooms, but inside the hallways, we could. They were trying to prevent us from going in deep into the hallways. They were making us stand just by the elevator banks, to which we fought with them saying, "That's public space." And so we were able to get the access to those hallways. We should have access to the elevators. We should have access to the staircases, but that's something we just can't push, and we shouldn't push because I think they'd kick us out at that point. Being in those hallways was rather tough because you can only go to a certain amount of floors. There were three different buildings that you could go into. One is Varick Street, but we rarely go over there. But multiple floors, you never know where these agents are going to pop up. At first, there were a lot of agents there that did not want to be there. You could just tell. They even would mutter it to them. One FBI agent said out loud, "I was solving murders, now I'm doing this shit." You could just see it in their behavior. ATF agents were there. I don't think some of them wanted to be there, but eventually they all started to mask up. They also got a bit aggressive with us because we're there with our press badges on. They would come up to us and take pictures of our faces, take pictures of our press badge. And the next day they'd walk up to us and go, "Oh, hey, Michael, you were in Ukraine, right?" Which is a little disconcerting with the masked man coming up to me or to any of us. They change the agents out like every 2 weeks. So once you kind of get a rhythm of to how some of these agents worked, they would change, and then all of a sudden there'd be a whole new crop. Beginning with the agents that didn't want to be there, now there's agents there that signed up for this, and they're far more aggressive, and they want to be there. They want to kick some ass. And as soon as these immigrants would be released from the courtrooms, no matter what the ruling was, and almost always the judge said, it's a continuance. You have a case for asylum. I'll see you in a year, or I'll see you in 6 months. I'll see you in 2027. And the agents had what they called, we heard them call them their target. They would grab them and disappear them. It was shocking to watch because we asked to see a warrant. And to this day, I've never seen a warrant. You would see in 290 a black man walk through the doors, and they would grab him and say, give us your ID and who are you, and surround him. And he's like, I'm an employee. I work for the EPA. Like I'd worked here for 13 years. Then he'd show his ID and then they let him go. It's astonishing. They have these rolls of paper, which are not warrants, but it's a kind of cheat sheet of who they're looking for. And if somebody looks like somebody, they're going to grab them. One gentleman, he's 22, he didn't speak any English at all, ran back into the courtroom, and the ICE agents chased him into the courtroom. As journalists, we're like, we're not supposed to shoot in that courtroom, but that was something we're like, we made the game day decision to shoot. And we shot them, chasing him around, flipping him over a bench, grabbing an agent, almost unholstering his gun inside the courtroom. And we all shot it. The journalists all got together and we said, we have to embargo that. We will show it someday, but we just documented, a crime. Often some of the journalists and I were like, why would these people show up? Like, why? Because they want to do the right thing. They are on a pathway to creating a better life for themselves. Having these people leave the courtroom and the door swings open and there are standing, 30 masked men and women. It's terrifying. You could see it. The contrast of people who have gone through the system and are being naturalized downstairs in 26 Federal Plaza and then upstairs where people are going through that very system, trying to get to that point and being disappeared or having their family ripped apart. It's kind of jaw dropping. But what else also jaw dropping is the guards and some of the agents and some of the private security that are there. They're all immigrants. They speak Spanish. We've had a number of the private security guards thanking us for being there, for documenting it. We had a few court reporters, maybe court clerks come up to us and say, like, thank God you're here, because when you weren't, they were really violent with these people. Not that the violence stopped, but it did tamp down, we were told. I know that we changed a couple of people not getting detained because the lawyers pled the case after they were being released and talked to these agents who had, I guess, the right to say, okay, we're going to let this guy go. Doesn't mean that they're not going to follow them home. But with the cameras there, with us documenting what they were doing, I feel like it shifted a bit. And it's not lost on us that they were using us in a way that's kind of like propaganda, as almost a recruiting tool of how menacing they can be, how violent they can be. Like, this is the job that they're saving America from these criminals, of which they are not. Being an illegal immigrant is not a criminal offense. It isn't. It's a civil offense. So to grab these men and women or children and disappear them and have them rot in a jail somewhere across the country for a year or two is insane to me. There's no doubt that there are people who have committed crimes, and those are the people that they said they were going to get. But here, it just doesn't seem to be the case. You're looking at 70% of the people that are coming in, it's over 70% now, coming in, trying to do the right thing, having no criminal offense at all, no criminal record, and they will still get detained. Of that other 30%, you're looking at a very small percentage that have done, really bad things. And then that should be dealt with. This seems to be just low-hanging fruit for these ICE officials and the people who are detaining them. It's a trap. What happens in those hallways is a disregard for the rule of law. From the time anybody leaves that courtroom and they have a continuance, and yet they're still detained, that's a disregard for the judge. And what's the judge supposed to do? Once they leave the courtroom, it's out of the judge's hands. The judge doesn't have an army, but now we have a new army. We have a new army with these agents who are signing up with a massive bonus. I think it's $50,000 bonus just to sign up. Some of them, it is written that they are paying off their student loans. They are tantalizing these guys, and you know, I can't get inside these men's heads or these women's heads, but I'm trying to be empathetic and seeing what they see. It's tough. It is tough. This just seems to be a turning point for America. Disregard of the rule of law, disregard for just a democratic process, the withering away of the judicial system and the immigration system, as flawed as it is. These are historical moments that I hope live on. If after all this we have a history of it, like this will be the history of it. This has been by far the hardest story I've ever worked on. And that's after covering the Ukraine war with 3 assignments, Standing Rock, under brutal conditions, just general oppression and general bad news that I've covered. And I think why I feel that this is so hard mentally, physically, and emotionally is that I do not see an end in sight. I don't see the finish line. It could end today. They could stop this today, but it's just not happening. And I feel that with all these other stories that I've covered, like I'm there for a particular reason to get the story, and then it's going to end. This protest will end. People will be arrested, but then they will be released. There will be a court hearing. Here, it goes into a black hole, just like these immigrants that are disappeared. We don't know where they go. They try to find them. It's very difficult. And so when I'm home at night after I've filed and it's just filtering through what I saw, it is a heavy burden, because that person that I saw disappeared yesterday, today, a week ago, they're still in jail for trying to do the right thing. And that's why I think it's been so difficult, but important to continue to document, because without us, there's no record of these people. Like, to watch them rip a man away from his kids, and these kids are just shattered. Like, to have that done in darkness and no one has a record of it, I think it would be horrible. But now we have a record of it.